Hi, it's Katrina. Number 10. Humpback whale in the forest. A couple of fishermen were walking through a mangrove forest in Brazil when they came across something they wouldn't have expected to see in 1,000 years. Lying in the jungle, far from any body of water, was the enormous decaying carcass of a whale. But how in the world did a humpback whale make it all the way into the Amazon jungle from the coast? Experts say it probably got lost at sea and then died from starvation or another unknown cause. Judging by its size, much smaller than most adult whales, the creature was just a baby. After dying, it likely got stranded on the Araruna beach near a small town in the mouth of the Amazon River and then was pushed inland by the tide. It was the rainy season when the whale was discovered, which means that the tide rises nearly 12 feet twice a day during this time. The forest then floods continuously as the water carries all kinds of surprises like abandoned ships and garbage deep into the jungle. In this case, the tide brought along the whale carcass as well. The whale was easier to carry on the tide thanks to decomposition. Experts believe the whale had been dead between 4 and 5 days before its body was discovered in its unusual resting place. Even at an outstanding 24 feet long, the whale was easily carried into the forest because it was bloated and buoyant, making for quite an unpleasant and surprising discovery. Number 9. The Screaming Lady of Mason County. In the woods south of the Great Bend in the Ohio River and a dark and eerie part of West Virginia, there is a ghost. At least that's what the locals say. The story of the ghost that haunts the big woods in West Virginia goes back over 150 years. Back in the 1850s, there was a small pocket of farmland surrounded on all 4 sides by thick woods. As the story goes, a group of lumberjacks or laborers were walking out of the forest one day, finished after a long shift of cutting down trees, and they spotted Mary. She was alone on the family farm while her parents, David and Catherine Somerville, along with the rest of her family, had gone to one of the neighbors' farms or to town on business. The men supposedly broke into the cabin, assaulted the lonely girl, and then took her deep into the forest. There, they buried her alive. At the time, nobody knew any of this. The family knew that Mary had gone missing, but they simply thought that maybe she had run away. The family left Mason County not long after that for Indiana, but Mary remained buried out in the forest. It was shortly after the Somerville family left that farmers and woodsmen began to hear a shrieking woman in the big woods at night. Irish immigrants feared a banshee, other locals feared spirits, and the persistent rumors of the screams and haunting of the woods was all around terrifying. Yet no one knew the story of Mary Somerville. It wasn't until 1986 that her shallow grave was finally discovered in the forest by a group of strip miners. Mining was halted, and staff from a local funeral home were called in to exhume her remains, later giving them a proper burial at Zuspan Cemetery. And since then, the ghost of Mary Somerville has remained mostly quiet. Number 8. An abandoned village. In Lancashire, England, a once abandoned village in the woods has now become a beautiful public park filled with fascinating ruins. It's just an hour from Manchester with full stone remnants and ancient bridges, and yet by day there is nothing scary about it. The abandoned village of Wycollar is complete with arched bridges dated back to the 13th century, and some as old as 1,000 years. There's a grand mansion called Wycollar Hall that's mostly collapsed, but it's overall a fairly peaceful and picturesque place. At least it is until the sun goes down. By night, the abandoned village is rumored to be haunted. It helps to know that Wycollar was a handloom weaver's village before the Industrial Revolution. After the revolution, residents found themselves out of work, with no way to pay the bills or feed their families. They moved to the nearest industrial town and never returned. For over a century, all the buildings had been abandoned, neglected, and are slowly falling to pieces. To make matters worse, there is a local legend that says a ghost horseman gallops in and out of the village during the full moon. Locals even talk about a woman dressed in black who is sometimes seen in the shattered windows of the derelict structures. Yet on the flip side, the abandoned hall was said to be the inspiration for the book Jane Eyre, the romance novel. As you can see, the abandoned woodland village is either terrifying and foreboding, or a little slice of heaven. It all depends on how you see it. Number 7. Blonde timber rattlesnake. A woman in Mississippi encountered a blonde timber rattlesnake. She was collecting berries back in September when she came across the wildly venomous serpent. And while rattlesnakes themselves aren't particularly rare, this one proved to be so rare that nobody had ever documented it before. It was Danielle Ladner who made the discovery. She and her friend Matt, along with her 2 daughters, were picking muscadines to make muscadine jelly. She bent over, went to pick some up, and realized there was a rattlesnake just 2 feet from her face, staring at her. She immediately screamed, pushed her young daughter out of the way, and stumbled back from the snake. She's lucky it didn't reach out to bite her when she screamed and made all the sudden movements. Danielle managed to get her daughters into the nearby vehicle, but before she left, she pulled out her phone to take a picture of the snake. It just looked so strange to her that she needed to have proof of what she'd seen. She also alerted the Mississippi Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks. They sent an officer to capture the blonde rattlesnake, and as it turned out, the snake was so rare that the chances of Danielle encountering it were so low that they can't even be calculated. That's according to herpetologist Terry Vandeventer. Terry also says the snake wasn't a true albino, but probably afflicted by hypomelanism, turning it pale blonde but leaving some color remaining. Have you ever encountered a snake in the woods? What happened? Let me know in the comments below. Number 6. Goats in the woods. Dead goats were discovered in the forest near Hardeeville, South Carolina. At least 4 small and bloodied goat corpses were found in the woods near Honey Hill Road, sparking an explosion of outrage. Locals have begun spreading rumors that the goats were the center of a satanic ritual. For anyone who remembers the Satanic Panic, a scare that swept America in the 80s and 90s, this should come as no surprise. But according to local police, it had nothing to do with Satanist or satanic rituals. Police Chief Sam Woodward says the goats weren't stolen or intentionally mutilated. The bodies just appeared to be in such terrible condition due to buzzards and other scavengers making a meal of the remains, leaving them in pretty terrible shape. There is no proof that they were tortured before they died, nor that they were sacrificed. Nonetheless, this hasn't stopped the people of Hardeeville from jumping right on the Satanism wagon. It didn't help that additional skulls were found at the scene, suggesting other creatures had been sacrificed in recent days. But again, according to the local police, there is no devil worship happening here. What do you think is going on? Let me know in the comments below. Number 5. Canadian Bigfoot. On Christmas night 2021, a group of travelers moving through Silverton in British Columbia spotted what they believe might have been Bigfoot. The 4 friends were heading down remote Highway 6. The people sitting in the front of the vehicle saw what they described as a large man-like figure strolling along the side of the road. I say the side of the road, but keep in mind how rural this road is. On either side are woods that go on for hundreds of miles. The friends were so surprised that they stopped the vehicle and got out. They say they had one last glimpse of a figure as large as a grizzly bear, only shaped like a human being, sprinting into the forest and vanishing. When they looked around, they found its tracks, a single pair of foot-like prints leading straight into the forest. Residents of the community were shocked and excited by the possible Bigfoot sighting, though many remain skeptical. What do you think? A moose? A bear? A notorious cryptid? Let me know in the comments. Number 4. Missing in the woods. Over 2 years after Rosemary Rodriguez from Texas went missing, the police found her remains in the woods. They actually found her body inside of her car, a lime green hatchback that vanished with her back in 2020. The hatchback was discovered on New Year's Eve 2021 by a man hiking through the forest. When he realized there was a human body inside the car, he immediately called the police. What remains unclear to investigators is how the missing woman or her vehicle got into the woods. It was pretty deep into some very dense foliage, completely overgrown by vegetation to the point where it was almost invisible. The investigators couldn't even get it out by themselves. They had to bring in heavy equipment just to haul the vehicle out of the trees. The Texas Rangers are currently working the case, but they can't say yet whether this was an accident or a murder. That being said, it's hard to imagine Rosemary drove her car all the way into the woods and then sat behind the steering wheel while she slowly starved to death. This just doesn't seem to make any sense. Number 3. Bad Delivery Man. In Alabama, the people of Blount County were having a problem with their deliveries. Dozens of people were not receiving them. Hundreds of packages never showed up to their intended recipients, and people were getting upset. Then, in a wooded ravine near the small town of Hayden, someone stumbled upon over 400 packages dumped indiscriminately. They were all FedEx packages and had been abandoned in the woods by a driver who couldn't be bothered to drop them off where they were supposed to go. Since the discovery, the police have tracked down the rogue FedEx driver and brought him in for questioning. But no motive has been given yet as to why he felt compelled to drive into the woods and abandon the packages instead of just taking them to the people who ordered them, or at least quitting his job. Even more bizarre is the fact that he never stole anything. All of the packages were still unopened. The police were actually so worried about locals getting wind of the discovery and showing up to loot the boxes that they had deputies protect the dump site until FedEx workers could arrive and collect them. Number 2. A hidden bunker. A pair of friends walking through the woods in northern Germany came across a few pipes sticking out of the ground. The pipes looked suspicious to them, so they followed them to a hidden bunker. The pipes were actually periscopes connected to rooms beneath the ground where soldiers could survey the woods to see if anyone was coming. Following the periscopes, the friends came to a concrete entrance embedded in a hillside. Naturally, the friends entered the bunker and found themselves in an underground place larger than either of them could have ever imagined. The friends journeyed through green and white hallways reminiscent of an abandoned asylum. The place was rotten, the pipes were rusted, and there was bizarre graffiti painted all over the walls. It smelled terrible, as if they were walking through a sewer. Some of the rooms were completely blocked off by rubble in the doorways. There were holes in the wall, abandoned furnaces once used to heat the underground complex, and all kinds of strange, abandoned chunks of equipment. It was an urban explorer's dream come true. But even after the friends posted photos of their journey online and word of the discovery spread across the net, nobody was able to identify the bunker. We still don't know what it was used for. The one theory that makes some sense is that it was perhaps a Nazi stronghold during World War II. Whoever occupied the bunker abandoned it in a hurry, possibly at the end of the war, stripping everything of importance and leaving the rest to be forgotten. Number 1. A mysterious vanishing. A missing couple from New Jersey were discovered dead in a dense forest near their home. According to the Stafford Township Police Department, the bodies of Gary and Lorraine Parker were found in the Warren Grove woods using a drone. And while it may not be that rare to find a couple of bodies in a New Jersey forest, the way in which these people were found is very strange. The details that make this discovery unusual are that they were found no more than 250 yards away from their home. They were also found about 70 yards from an ATV that people believe they had driven into the woods themselves. They were even lying together in the dirt as if they had just laid down to take a nap. The couple had originally gone missing back in November. Over 100 volunteers and police officers formed a search party and scanned the woods near their home, but were unable to locate the pair. It wasn't until they used a special drone to scan the densest part of the forest that they finally found the bodies. Since their bodies have been recovered, police have been unable to determine a cause of death. It looks like they literally just dropped dead close enough to their home that they could have even walked back. Police don't even know why they ended up in that part of the forest, in what was basically a thicket. This really is one of those mysteries that we may never solve. Even if one had been injured, the other would have been able to walk back home to call for help. Plus, when people searched the home, they discovered Lorraine's cane still inside. Considering she had mobility issues, there is no way she would have left her house without it. It's almost as if they sleepwalked onto their ATV, drove into the thicket, and then just died mysteriously. Thanks for watching! What's the most interesting thing you've ever found in the woods? Let us all know in the comments below. Remember to subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you next time. Bye!